Officially Monday. Yeah, Monday, so it was a pretty quick turnaround.
Take me through the emotions of that day, knowing that this was coming your way and that you'd have a chance to play on a team that might need you to play right away.
Yeah, no, I was super excited. Yeah, I mean, it means everything, to, again, just remain faithful and trust the process. It speaks to resiliency, it speaks to faith, and I'm really excited to be here. I've been watching and I've been studying, and, to be able to watch it and see it from, a professional, point of view has, just helped the transition, and the girls and the organization have been great in welcoming me here.
Let's test your instincts. When a team lets go of a guard after just 2 games, do you think it means their star guard is finally ready to return? That's the exact question Fever fans are asking after Kyra Lambert's release. Could this be the hidden clue that Caitlin Clark is about to rejoin the lineup? Or is it just wishful thinking? Stick with me, because the real answer is way more complicated than you might think. Before we move on, I will like you to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Imagine this. You finally get your foot in the door, make your debut, only play 2 games, and suddenly you don't even have a jersey anymore. That's exactly what just happened to Kyra Lambert. She came in on a short-term hardship deal, got a taste of the action, and then was out just like that. To most people, that kind of quick release screams one thing: Caitlin Clark must be on her way back. But here's where it gets tricky. The situation isn't nearly as clear-cut as fans want it to be. Lambert wasn't just picked at random. The Fever needed help, and fast. They had lost 2 guards for the season, which left the rotation looking thin and full of holes. Ari McDonald was gone.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is, we keep saying it, but they're a resilient group. They understand that there's been a lot of change, not just with our teams, but some of these teams that we're facing too, so to speak, but also understand that this time of year, nothing's going to be perfect, right? And whether that's injury related, whether that's adjustment related, whether that's, player personnel, related, and they just want to play. I think with some of them, we have an idea of the things that will run when they're on the floor and the things that we won't. With some of them, we're trying to figure out.
Sydney Colson was ruled out, and the team had to find somebody who could handle the ball and soak up minutes. Lambert came in to fill that exact need with a 7-day contract. That's like a temporary ticket to prove yourself. She got her chance, made it onto the floor in 2 games, and then suddenly the team decided to move on. That's the moment people circled as the clue pointing to Clark. Now, fans immediately jumped to their own conclusion, and social media lit up with excitement. Posts were flying everywhere, claims that Caitlin had to be ready, that this was the sign everyone was waiting for. But the problem, nothing that Coach Stephanie White has said actually backs that up. She's been consistent about making Clark's health the top priority. She's said before that the timing of injuries and returns never really works out in a clean or perfect way. And for her, it's always been about making sure Clark is good for the long run, not just throwing her back on the court because the Fever are desperate for wins in August. That's where the tension sets in. On one hand, you have the hype online, people already preparing for Clark's comeback, almost treating Lambert's release like a formal announcement. But on the other hand, you've got the actual words from the coach, reminding everyone that a short-term roster transaction isn't exactly the same as a medical clearance. And it makes you stop for a second. If Clark isn't guaranteed to return yet, then why would Indiana cut its most recent depth piece so fast? Remember, Lambert wasn't some untested rookie. She had been thriving overseas, putting up impressive numbers as a scorer and a playmaker. She was the kind of guard that could actually carry her own weight while key players were sitting out. For a team patching holes, that should be useful, which makes releasing her after such a short stint feel confusing, unless you understand the bigger picture. Here's the reality. The Fever didn't cut Lambert because Clark was ready to play. They cut her to leave themselves options. Think of it like this: clearing a chair at the dinner table before the guest even arrives. You don't know exactly when they'll show up, but you don't want to be scrambling for space once they knock. That's the strategy. By releasing Lambert, they're keeping the chair open just in case Clark can sit back down sooner rather than later. And if her recovery still needs more time, the Fever haven't lost anything. They can still maneuver, maybe even bring in another familiar face down the line. So what does Lambert's release really mean? It's not proof of Clark's comeback. It's proof that Indiana wants flexibility. They're walking a line between preparing for their star to return and staying ready if she doesn't. In a playoff chase that tightens with every loss, that kind of preparation matters. But here's the thing that makes people scratch their heads. If Clark isn't back yet, why risk cutting the only extra layer of depth you have? That's where the story suddenly takes a surprising turn. Here's the part that makes fans scratch their heads. Kyra Lambert wasn't just a fill-in who could barely run the offense. Overseas in Greece, she was putting up legit numbers, around 15 points a night with nearly 6 assists. That shows she can score and create at the same time. So if the Fever had a guard who was producing like that in Europe, why would they cut her after only 2 games? On the surface, it doesn't add up, but when you zoom in on where the Fever are right now, the move starts to tell its own story. The team is clawing to stay alive in the playoff picture. These aren't garbage time games where you're giving young players a chance to grow. Every possession matters, every substitution matters, and every mistake could tilt the entire playoff chase in the wrong direction. Guard depth has been an issue all season, so cutting one of the only healthy replacements looks reckless. But clearly, the Fever thinks something else is worth more right now than hanging on to a newcomer, no matter how good her numbers were overseas. Another factor that helped Sims stay: continuity. She had already been on back-to-back hardship contracts with Indiana before this one. That means she had been in the locker room, on the bench, and actually played alongside the same group of teammates over multiple weeks. Compare that to Lambert, who just arrived and barely scratched the surface of learning the system. Continuity always wins out when the games matter more. Coaches don't want to teach plays and rotations in September. They want someone who can step in without blinking. Sims brings that, Lambert doesn't, and that's the cold truth of the decision. Complicating everything further is Sophie Cunningham's knee injury. With her dealing with that issue, the backcourt is still stretched thin. That makes every roster slot more important. Indiana had to look not just at who could put up numbers, but at who could be trusted in multiple roles if things went sideways. That's why Sims was the safer bet. She can come in, defend, give you veteran minutes, and keep the structure steady. Lambert simply didn't have that history with the team. She might have the higher ceiling, but the Fever weren't chasing potential. They were playing the odds on reliability. So when you add it up, the picture becomes clearer. The Fever weren't betting against Lambert's talent. They were betting on chemistry and readiness. The gamble wasn't about whether Clark is back today or tomorrow. It was about leaving the roster uncluttered so when she does get cleared, they can plug her in seamlessly. Clearing Lambert this early is less about news on Clark's recovery and more about avoiding a jammed backcourt when the timing does line up. Lambert in the end was the one caught in the numbers game. She wasn't released because she failed. She was released because the Fever value rhythm and familiarity more than what looks good on a box score from another league. It stings for her, but that's the reality of how competitive rosters are managed this late in the season. Cutting Kyra Lambert doesn't prove Caitlin Clark is stepping on the floor tomorrow. What it shows is the Fever making room, clearing a path just in case. Think about it. Sometimes the biggest message isn't an injury update. It's the low-key roster move nobody saw coming. Fans want the announcement, but teams usually send their hints through actions, not words. That's why the next few games matter so much. Don't just listen for news. Watch who checks in off the bench. That substitution could tell you more about Clark's real timeline than anything released in a press statement.